So, one of the major lessons I learned is that I'm not in the field of law as much, which shouldn't be the case because I'm living in the world of law that occupies certain part of the world. But what amazes me is that to process the law, or it could be actually certain order within certain organization, people respond by just doing what they are told to do by the law. And sometimes the organization has the person who appear to have law, but he is not entitled. But the impression is that the people with authority has the way to command people to do certain things as much as law is developed and command people to follow so that the society is under harmonious condition. By itself, I agree that we have a system like that, but at the bottom of it, there's always a chance that this law, whatever it is, can be interpreted differently or set up in the wrong condition, assuming certain ideas, but not the reality. So the bottom of this long sentence is that I need to be very careful as I went through this medical exam, for example. They check so many things, and the immigration officer checks so many things, and if something's wrong, they just return the paper. And I thought about the Nazis in Germany and the Jewish people to go through with certain certification to see if they are qualified to do this and that. Some letters on piece of paper may determine the future and nothing else. And that's the law in principle, if I'm not mistaken. So if the world is functioning in that way, number one, there's not much questioning. You just do whatever law says. If you research something, it's necessary, no matter what time it requires, you do it. Because that's law. And you're qualified to do that, then you do that. And there's no argument to that. Well, maybe there may be a room for that, but I don't know about it. So that's one. And the other is the impact to the organization by having a law and people following it. Doing the clerk work and assembling and processing and do whatever is necessary according to the law is viewed as important, even if the person doesn't think it's important. So how can I say this? Genuine human integrity of being a human may be challenged because of the logic. And I even wrote a book called Results from the Heart, where Dalai Lama sent me the foreword. And there I said, that I think is the point. Use the brain, listen to your heart, and live with the mission. So using the brain, not being used by the brain. The logic is in the brain, and we can use it. But if we are used by the brain, whether that's right or wrong, that's mechanical way of living. You just follow the law, even if you think it's doubtful. And I challenge that. The society may be built according to the principle that the law is important. And look at Trump, what he's doing. He's just challenging whatever he can and causing the mess in the world because that's the law in the US. And they thought through so much to come up to that level, which actually in Japan doesn't exist as much. So check and balance is there more so in the US from the logic point of view. The check and balance system happening in Japan is more coming from the consensus or maybe a little bit more emotional part, which could be dubious depending upon the situation as may have led to the World War II. So this is a tricky path. If you go to the right or left, you just get off the road, the main road, the middle way. But as a company of lawyers, they have to follow the law. That comes number one. So whatever the situation is, if the research is necessary, they'll do it, and it's justifiable according to, I'm sure by the law, it is allowed and it should be treated as such, and may not question much, because lessons learned out of the humanistic part of the equation is not important. If the law, the equation, logic is most important, that's what it happens. And I challenge that in many ways in the organization, where the top management, create the vision and the law and the approach, and people follow it. So people at the top says, I'll tell you what to do, and the people at the bottom says, just tell me what to do. And in my 35 years of life in the US, I challenge that. That is one way to look at it. But if you do so, then the people at the bottom is just subservient of just following whatever the order comes. And they have lots of creativity and will to do lots of things that may be suppressed because of this atmosphere of the law or the command chain. So I may think about this Nazi Germany, and the people have to be concerned about what on the certificate, and the Gestapo enforce the law. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm comparing the lawyers' work with Gestapo, but in a way, there's an element of the law being most important. And of course it has to be. I agree with that. Immigration has to go through all the detail of the, doing things right. And anything that is violating, they can have the law to push it back. Yeah, that has to be a system like that. But let's also think about the point of view of, let's say, artificial intelligence is coming in. Or the mechanical work, if I may use the word mechanical. Following the law seems to be replaceable because it's a logic and the computer can do it. In the future, lots of law work should be done by the computer, and that's what people are talking about and happening. There are companies processing it. So what does it mean? I think I don't have the answer for that because this is not the area I'm familiar with. But I tend to think still the balance of the brain, or the logic, and the heart as human being, living being with emotion, may need to find the happy middle way along the way. Not thinking that the logic and the numbers and what it says in the fine print is the most important thing. There may be other fine print of the human emotion that may have to be processed in a humanistic way. Certain organization is set up not to do that. Accounting, law, lots of logic. And the human resource, and I don't know what else, relating to the shop floor people, the top and shop, the gap is existing because of the nuances. The emotional attachment or detachment become a part of the equation. So what does it mean? I think we lose fun out of life if we just depend on too much law. The compassionate feeling and the things that can be left behind because sweeping by the law may not catch those emotional impact of the people. And if you think about it that way as a lawyer, maybe you cannot be a good lawyer. But having said that, Charlie Munger being the lawyer in the US, and he had shown that compassionate sense of not totally depending upon the law. And his firm he developed in the US still has his name. And he's a billionaire, doing more investment and leaving the law. I think one of the points, just to thinking much farther, is that in his case, he figured out that the human psychology is a very important part of the equation. And the investment is connected to that, and therefore that's how he chose the path. So everybody has a right to choose whatever path, and the situation is changing. So those are the kind of reflections that I have. And my path have been, being nuclear engineer and safety analysis of even Fukushima I did for a few years. I have this logical part of it, which I didn't like so much, but I did it. But then I went back to the business or into the business and realized some of the people left behind because of the top down, do as I say, and people taking the position, just tell me what to do. I didn't like it. So my path is depending upon that experience and what that experience and the, if I can call it, the insight that I get. I just wanted to process with you. I talked about the meaning of work and the lessons learned because that's where I came from. What is the point of going through this and learning the lesson? Maybe if you just follow the way and the law, there's no need to learn the lesson because you just do whatever is necessary to exert your energy, even if it takes lots of time, extensive work. Don't question, because the question is not good to interpret law. You have to follow the law. All right. So that's the lesson I learned. How to deal with it is another case into the future. But it's like going through the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. I go through this process as a cycle of improvement going forward. I have reflected, I understood it. Maybe I choose the life in the wood, as I originally came to New Zealand to do just that, and fly fishing, chasing trout and all that. Now I'm much older age and facing different circumstances with people, and the world is changing. Lots of questions to go through. So how to answer the question is on my side of business, but given the opportunity to share this much, I'm hoping that there may be something interesting, meaningful, if such is the word that I can use, to find what we have gone through and figure out what may be the best choice and the way into the future. Thank you so much.